The scent of burning sage filled the air as Olivia Jenkins hurried through the dusty streets of Silver Peak, Nevada, clutching her worn leather medicine bag to her chest, while angry voices echoed behind her in the growing darkness of the spring evening in 1878. She had known this day might come, had seen the suspicious glances from townspeople when she gathered plants on the hillsides or mixed her remedies by candlelight, but she had foolishly believed her good work would speak louder than their superstitions. Which? The word carried through the evening air like a gunshot, and Olivia quickened her pace, her long dark braids swinging against her back as she navigated the wooden sidewalks toward the small cabin she rented on the edge of town. Behind her, the mob was growing. It had started with Martha Prescott, the banker's wife, who had blamed Olivia for her husband's sudden illness, despite the fact that Olivia had been the one to nurse him back to health 3 weeks prior. Then Samuel Wright, the preacher, had added his voice to the accusations, citing her knowledge of plants and healing as evidence of dark practices. Fear spread faster than wildfire in small towns, and Silver Peak was no exception. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs as she reached her cabin and fumbled with the latch. 22 years of life, and she had never imagined it would come to this. Her mother had been an herbalist too, had taught Olivia everything she knew about healing before dying of consumption when Olivia was 17. She had come to Silver Peak 5 years ago, hoping to start fresh after her father's death, hoping to use her knowledge to help people. Instead, she had become their scapegoat. The door swung open just as the first rock hit the side of her cabin. Olivia stumbled inside, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she barred the door behind her. Through the small window, she could see torches gathering in the street, their flames casting dancing shadows across the faces of people she had helped, people she had healed. "Come out, witch." The voice belonged to Henry Carlson, whose daughter Olivia had saved from fever just 2 months ago. The irony burned worse than the fear coiling in her stomach. Olivia pressed her back against the door, her mind racing through possibilities. She could try to slip out the back, head for the hills and hope to outrun them in the darkness. But where would she go? The nearest town was 30 miles away across unforgiving desert terrain. She had no horse, no supplies for such a journey. A gunshot cracked through the air, and Olivia flinched as the bullet splintered the window frame. They were not just trying to scare her anymore. This was real. This was deadly serious. Just as she was gathering her courage to make a run for it, another voice cut through the chaos outside, deep and commanding and completely unexpected. "That is enough." The authority in those words was undeniable, and to Olivia's shock, the mob actually quieted. She crept to the window, peering carefully through the damaged frame to see who had spoken. A man sat astride a massive bay horse, his silhouette backlit by the torches. He was tall even in the saddle, broad-shouldered, wearing the dusty leather chaps and worn hat of a working cattleman. As he urged his horse forward into the circle of light, Olivia could make out more details. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with sun-weathered skin and a strong jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble. But it was his eyes that caught her attention even from a distance, sharp and assessing as they swept over the crowd. "Jackson Davis," Henry Carlson said, and there was uncertainty in his voice now. "This does not concern you. The woman is a witch. She has cursed this town with her dark practices." "Have you lost your mind, Carlson?" Jackson's voice was steady but held an edge of steel. "That woman saved your daughter's life. She saved half this town when the influenza swept through last winter. What evidence do you have of witchcraft beyond your own ignorance?" "She uses plants and powders, speaks in strange tongues when she makes her remedies," Martha Prescott called out shrilly. My husband was healthy until she touched him with her evil. Now look at him, weak as a kitten." "Your husband had a burst appendix, Martha," Jackson said, and there was barely concealed contempt in his tone now. "Without Miss Jenkins's treatment, he would have died. The fact that he is weak is because he is recovering, not because of any curse." Olivia's hands trembled as she watched the scene unfold. She had seen Jackson Davis around town before, knew he ran a successful cattle operation in the valleys outside Silver Peak, but they had never spoken directly. He kept to himself mostly, coming into town only for supplies or to sell his stock. She had no idea why he was defending her now. "The preacher says she is a witch," someone from the crowd shouted. "He has read the signs." Jackson turned his horse to face Samuel Wright, who stood at the edge of the mob clutching a Bible. "Then perhaps the preacher should read his Bible more carefully. Does it not teach love thy neighbor? Does it not warn against false witness? You are about to murder an innocent woman based on superstition and fear. Tell me, preacher, where in your good book does it say that healing the sick is the work of the devil?" Samuel Wright's face flushed red in the torchlight. "The devil can take many forms. He works through those who seem good to deceive the faithful." "That is convenient theology," Jackson said dryly. He swung down from his horse with an easy grace, his boots hitting the dusty street with a decisive thud. "Here is what is going to happen. You are all going to go home. Tomorrow, when cooler heads prevail, we can discuss this like civilized people. But tonight, you will not lay a hand on Miss Jenkins." "You cannot tell us what to do, Davis," Henry Carlson said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "You are just one man." In a movement so fast Olivia almost missed it, Jackson's hand dropped to the revolver at his hip. He did not draw it, but the threat was clear. "I am one man who is very good with this weapon and who has right on his side. Are you willing to test me, Carlson?" The silence that followed was heavy and tense. Olivia held her breath, not daring to hope that this stranger's intervention would actually work. The mob could easily overwhelm him if they chose to. But something in Jackson's bearing, in the absolute certainty of his stance, seemed to give them pause. Finally, Samuel Wright spoke. "This is not over. The council will meet tomorrow to discuss what to do about the witch." "Then we will discuss it tomorrow," Jackson agreed. "In daylight, with clear heads. Now go home, all of you, before someone does something they cannot take back." Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd began to disperse. There were mutters and dark looks cast toward both the cabin and Jackson, but the immediate danger was passing. Olivia sagged against the wall, her legs suddenly weak with relief. Jackson waited until the last of the mob had drifted away before approaching the cabin. He knocked gently on the door, his earlier command replaced by something softer. "Miss Jenkins, it is Jackson Davis. You are safe now." "May I speak with you?" Olivia's first instinct was to refuse, to barricade herself inside and hope the morning would bring better fortune. But this man had just risked his own standing in the community to defend her. The least she could do was hear him out. With shaking hands, she lifted the bar from the door and opened it a crack. In the flickering light of the retreating torches, Jackson Davis looked even more imposing up close. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that spoke of years of hard work. But it was his eyes that held her attention, a striking blue-gray that regarded her with concern rather than judgment. "Thank you," Olivia managed, her voice rough. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," Jackson said simply. "What they were about to do was wrong. May I come in? We need to talk about what happens next." Olivia hesitated only a moment before stepping back to let him enter. Her cabin was small and simple, one room with a bed in the corner, a table and 2 chairs, and shelves lined with jars and bottles containing her various remedies. The scent of dried herbs hung in the air, and bundles of plants dangled from the ceiling beams. Jackson removed his hat as he entered, ducking slightly to clear the doorframe. His gaze swept the room, taking in the orderly arrangement of supplies, the careful labels on each jar, the small table where Olivia prepared her medicines. When he looked back at her, there was something like approval in his expression. "You have quite the setup here," he said. "My mother used to make remedies like these. Before she passed, she taught me a bit about healing plants." "I am sorry for your loss," Olivia said automatically, then felt foolish. His mother could have died years ago for all she knew. "It was a long time ago," Jackson confirmed. "I was 15. But I never forgot what she taught me. When I heard what was happening tonight, I knew it was wrong. You are not a witch, Miss Jenkins. You are a healer, and this town needs you whether they know it or not." Olivia moved to light a lamp, needing something to do with her hands. The warm glow pushed back the shadows, making the cabin feel slightly less like a trap. "They will not see it that way tomorrow. The preacher has turned them against me. I should leave Silver Peak before the council meets." "And go where?" Jackson asked, not unkindly. "The desert will kill you before you make it to the next settlement. And even if you did survive, what is to stop the same thing from happening wherever you go? Fear of what we do not understand is everywhere, Miss Jenkins." He was right, and Olivia knew it. She sank into one of the chairs at her table, suddenly exhausted. "Then what do you suggest? I cannot defend myself against an entire town. Tonight proved that." Jackson was quiet for a moment, and when Olivia looked up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He pulled out the other chair and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I have a proposition," he said slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "My ranch is successful, but it is hard work for one man. I have been considering hiring help, but what I really need is not another ranch hand. I need someone who can tend to injuries when my men get hurt, someone who knows how to treat sick cattle, someone who can keep a household running. I need a healer." Olivia's heart was beating faster now, though she could not quite say why. "You want to hire me?" "More than that," Jackson said, and now his blue-gray eyes held hers with unmistakable purpose. "I want to marry you, Miss Jenkins. I want to make you my wife and bring you to my ranch where you will be under my protection. As Mrs. Davis, you will have the full weight of my name and my reputation behind you. No one in this town will dare threaten you again." For a long moment, Olivia could only stare at him in shock. Marriage. To a man she had never even spoken to before tonight. It was absurd, impossible, completely improper. And yet, what other choice did she have? "You do not even know me," she finally managed. "Why would you tie yourself to someone you have never met, risk your own reputation to save a woman accused of witchcraft?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Jackson said simply. "And because I have watched you over the past year, seen how you help people, how you never ask for more than they can pay, how you go out to the homesteads when someone is sick, even if it means traveling through the night. You are a good person, Miss Jenkins, and good people are rare enough that they should be protected." He had been watching her. The thought sent an unexpected flutter through Olivia's chest. She studied him more carefully now, taking in the honest openness of his expression, the strength in his work-roughened hands, the way he held himself with quiet confidence. He was offering her salvation, but more than that, he was offering her respect. In a world where women had few choices and fewer protections, what he was proposing was nothing short of extraordinary. "I do not love you," Olivia said, needing to be honest even as she felt herself leaning toward acceptance. "And you do not love me. How can a marriage work under those circumstances?" "Love can grow," Jackson said quietly. My parents' marriage was arranged by their families, and they came to care for each other deeply over the years. We would be starting with more than they had. At least we are choosing this ourselves, and we both know what we are getting into. I will not lie to you, Miss Jenkins. I need help on the ranch, and you need protection. But I also promise you this. I will treat you with respect, honor you as my wife, and never raise a hand to you in anger. Your skills will be valued, your knowledge appreciated. You will have a home, safety, and the freedom to practice your healing without fear. Olivia closed her eyes, her mind spinning. This was happening so fast. Just an hour ago, she had been facing a mob. Now she was being proposed to by a man who was offering her everything she needed and asking for surprisingly little in return. What do you expect from this marriage? She asked, opening her eyes to meet his gaze directly. She needed to know what he wanted, needed to understand the full scope of what she was agreeing to. Jackson did not look away, and she respected him for it. I expect partnership. Someone to help run the household, to tend to the medical needs of my ranch and my men. As for the more intimate aspects of marriage, I will leave that entirely up to you. I will not force myself on you, Miss Jenkins. If in time you come to want that kind of relationship, then we will cross that bridge together. But it will be your choice, always. The tightness in Olivia's chest eased slightly. Many men would have seen this situation as an opportunity to take advantage, to claim their marital rights regardless of her feelings. That Jackson was explicitly giving her control over that aspect of their relationship spoke volumes about his character. I need to think, Olivia said, but even as she spoke, she knew what her answer would be. There really was no choice, not if she wanted to survive. But more than that, something about Jackson Davis made her want to say yes. Perhaps it was the way he had stood up to the mob without hesitation. Perhaps it was the respect in his eyes when he looked at her work. Or perhaps it was simply that, for the first time in a very long time, someone was offering to stand beside her rather than above her or against her. Take the night, Jackson said, rising from his chair. But we should do this quickly if we are going to do it at all. The council meets tomorrow afternoon. If we are married by morning, you will have the protection of my name before they can take any action against you. By morning, Olivia's eyes widened. How is that possible? Judge Morrison owes me a favor, Jackson said with a hint of a smile. He will do the ceremony tonight if I ask. I know it is fast, Miss Jenkins, but we do not have the luxury of time. He was right. They did not. And suddenly, with crystalline clarity, Olivia knew what she had to do. Yes, she said, standing to face him. Yes, I will marry you, Mr. Davis, and thank you, not just for this, but for standing up for me tonight when no one else would. Something warm flickered in Jackson's eyes, an emotion she could not quite name. You do not need to thank me. We are going to be partners, you and I. Partners stand up for each other. Partners. The word resonated with Olivia in a way that husband and wife did not. It spoke of equality, of mutual respect, of two people working together toward a common goal. She could live with being Jackson Davis's partner. I should gather my things, she said, looking around the cabin at 5 years of her life. She did not have much, but what she had was precious. Her medicines, her books, the few personal items that had belonged to her parents. Take only what you need tonight, Jackson said. We can come back for the rest tomorrow after the ceremony, after the town knows you are under my protection. For now, pack what you cannot leave behind and we will go to Judge Morrison's house. Moving quickly, Olivia gathered her most important possessions. Her mother's journal, filled with recipes and knowledge passed down through generations. Her father's pocket watch, the only thing of his she had kept, a change of clothes. And most importantly, a selection of her most valuable and hard-to-replace remedies. Everything else could wait. When she emerged from behind the privacy screen with a small bag, Jackson was waiting by the door. He had been studying the labels on her jars, she realized, and the thought pleased her. He was genuinely interested in her work, not just tolerating it. "Ready?" he asked, and she nodded. They stepped out into the night together, and Olivia did not look back as Jackson helped her mount his horse. She sat in front of him in the saddle, very aware of his solid presence behind her, his arms coming around her to grip the reins. It was the closest she had ever been to a man who was not family, and despite the strange circumstances, she felt safe. Judge Morrison's house was on the far side of town, a substantial two-story structure that spoke of his importance in the community. Jackson dismounted first, then reached up to help Olivia down. His hands were steady on her waist, his touch respectful but sure. The judge answered his door in a nightshirt and robe, looking disgruntled until he saw who was calling. "Jackson Davis, do you have any idea what time it is?" "I do, and I apologize," Jackson said smoothly. "But I need a favor, Judge, and I need it tonight." They were ushered inside, and over the next 20 minutes, Jackson explained the situation while the judge's expression grew increasingly serious. Olivia sat quietly, letting Jackson do the talking, still somewhat dazed by how quickly her life was changing. "This is highly irregular," Judge Morrison said finally. "But given the circumstances, I agree that immediate action is warranted. You are both of legal age and sound mind, and you are entering this arrangement of your own free will." "We are," Jackson confirmed, and Olivia nodded her agreement. "Very well. Let me get my wife as a witness, and we will perform the ceremony." Mrs. Morrison appeared a few minutes later, curiosity bright in her eyes as she took in the scene. The judge brought out his book, and suddenly they were standing before him, Olivia's hand in Jackson's as words were spoken that would bind their lives together. "Do you, Jackson Alexander Davis, take this woman, Olivia Marie Jenkins, to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Jackson said, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Olivia Marie Jenkins, take this man, Jackson Alexander Davis, to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Olivia took a breath, aware that this moment would define the rest of her life. Then she looked into Jackson's eyes and found only kindness and strength waiting there. "I do," she said. "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Nevada, I pronounce you husband and wife. Jackson, you may kiss your bride." Jackson's eyes met hers, a silent question in them. Olivia gave the smallest of nods, and he leaned down to press a gentle, chaste kiss to her lips. It was over in a moment, but it sealed their vows more than any words could have. They signed the marriage certificate, Mrs. Morrison and the judge adding their signatures as witnesses. Just like that, Olivia Jenkins ceased to exist. She was now Olivia Davis, wife of Jackson Davis, under his protection and bearing his name. "Congratulations," Judge Morrison said, though his expression was troubled. "I hope you know what you are doing, Jackson. The town council will not be pleased about this." "The town council does not have a say in who I marry," Jackson replied calmly. "And as of tonight, any accusations against Miss Jenkins, now Mrs. Davis, are accusations against me and my family. I trust you will make that clear at tomorrow's meeting, Judge." The judge nodded slowly. "I will, though I suspect this will cause quite a stir." "Let it," Jackson said. He turned to Olivia, offering his arm. "Come, wife, let me take you home." Home. The word was both strange and wonderful on Olivia's ears. She had not had a real home since her father died. Now she was married to a man she had met only an hour ago, heading to a ranch she had never seen. It should have terrified her. Instead, as she took Jackson's arm and they walked out into the night together, Olivia felt something she had not experienced in years: hope. The ride to Jackson's ranch took nearly an hour, following a winding trail into the hills outside Silver Peak. The moon was high and bright, casting silver light across the rugged landscape. Olivia had been beyond the town boundaries before, gathering plants on the hillsides, but never this far. The ranch, when it finally came into view, was larger than she had expected. A substantial house stood at the center, 2 stories with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property, barns and storage sheds, and what looked like a bunkhouse for ranch hands. In the moonlight, she could make out fencing stretching into the distance and the dark shapes of cattle grazing in the pastures. "This is all yours?" Olivia asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "It is," Jackson confirmed, "and now it is yours too. I have 4 men who work for me, good men who live in the bunkhouse during the season. My foreman, Miguel Cordova, has been with me since I bought this land 6 years ago. You will like him. His wife, Rosa, sometimes comes to help with cooking and cleaning during busy times." He guided the horse to the house, dismounting before helping Olivia down. Up close, she could see that while the structure was large and well-built, it lacked the softer touches that spoke of a woman's presence. The porch was bare of any decorations, the windows dark and utilitarian. "It is not much to look at right now," Jackson admitted, following her gaze. "I have been more focused on building up the herd than on making the house pretty. But it is solid and warm, and now that you are here, perhaps we can make it more of a home." He unlocked the front door and lit a lamp, the warm glow revealing a spacious main room with a large stone fireplace, comfortable but worn furniture, and floors that could use a good scrubbing. Everything was neat enough, but there was a bachelor quality to the space that spoke of functionality over comfort. "The kitchen is through there," Jackson said, pointing to a doorway. "I have been doing my own cooking, so I am afraid it is pretty basic. Upstairs are 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom has been mine, but I will take one of the other rooms tonight. You should have your privacy." Olivia turned to look at him, this man who was now her husband. The lamplight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes held both strength and gentleness. He had turned his entire life upside down tonight for her, had offered her not just protection but partnership, and was now giving her space and respect when many men would have demanded their marital rights immediately. "Mr. Davis," she began, but he held up a hand. "Jackson, please. We are married now. I think we can use first names." "Jackson," Olivia corrected, tasting the name on her tongue. "I want you to know that I understand what you have done for me tonight, the risk you have taken, the commitment you have made. I will do everything in my power to be a good partner to you, to earn the protection you have offered." "You do not need to earn anything, Olivia," Jackson said softly. "You are my wife now. That is enough." But it was not enough, not for Olivia. She had been raised to believe in pulling her own weight, in contributing fairly to any arrangement. She would not be a burden to this man, no matter how kind he was. "Still," she said firmly, "I will help however I can. You said you need someone to tend to injuries and illness on the ranch. I can do that. And I can cook and keep house and tend a garden if you have the space for one. I will not be dead weight, Jackson." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines and making him look younger, more approachable. "I never thought you would be. Now come, let me show you the rest of the house. You should know where everything is." He gave her a tour, pointing out the kitchen with its large stove and well-stocked pantry, the dining room that clearly saw little use, the study lined with books that surprised her. Upstairs, the 3 bedrooms were spacious and well-appointed. The master bedroom was clearly Jackson's, with personal items scattered about and a large bed covered with a simple quilt. "My mother made that," Jackson said, noticing where her gaze had landed. "It is one of the few things I have left of her." "It is beautiful," Olivia said honestly. The quilt was a complex pattern of blues and greens, the stitching precise and even. "She was very talented." "She was," Jackson agreed. There was old grief in his voice, but also acceptance. "I will move my things to one of the other rooms tonight. This should be yours now." "Jackson, no," Olivia protested. "This is your room, your home. I cannot displace you like that." "You are not displacing me," Jackson said. "You are my wife. The master bedroom should be yours. I will be comfortable in one of the others." They stood there for a moment, an impasse of politeness, until Olivia laughed despite herself. "This is absurd. We are arguing over who gets the better room like children fighting over candy." Jackson's smile widened. "I suppose we are." "All right, how about this? You take this room for now and we can sort out the rest later. You have had a long and difficult night, Olivia. You should rest." He was right. Exhaustion was beginning to drag at her now that the immediate danger had passed. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know I have said it before, but I cannot say it enough. You saved my life tonight, Jackson. And you have given me hope that this house might finally become a home," Jackson replied. "Sleep well, Olivia. We will figure out the rest in the morning." He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Olivia was alone in the room that was now hers. She set her bag down on a chair and moved to the window, looking out over the moonlit ranch. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. Closer by, she could hear the small sounds of Jackson moving around in one of the other rooms. She was married. To a stranger who had shown her more kindness and respect in a few hours than most of the people in Silver Peak had shown her in 5 years. Olivia changed into her nightgown and climbed into the large bed, pulling the beautiful quilt up to her chin. The bed smelled faintly of Jackson, leather and sage, and something uniquely masculine. It should have felt wrong to be sleeping in his bed in his house, bound to him by vows spoken in haste and desperation. Instead, as sleep claimed her, Olivia felt safer than she had in years. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee brewing downstairs. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then memory returned in a rush: the mob, Jackson's defense, the hasty marriage. She sat up quickly, noting that her bag had been placed on the dresser, probably by Jackson at some point during the night. Someone knocked softly on the door. "Olivia, are you awake?" "Yes," she called, scrambling out of bed and looking around for her clothes. "Give me just a moment." She dressed quickly in the same clothes from the night before, braiding her long, dark hair back from her face. When she opened the door, Jackson was waiting in the hallway, freshly shaved and wearing clean clothes. In the daylight, she could see him more clearly. He really was quite handsome in a rugged, weathered way. His eyes were kind as they met hers. "Good morning," he said. "I made coffee and there is bread and jam if you are hungry. Then I thought we should head into town. The council meets at 2 this afternoon and I want to make sure everyone knows about our marriage before then." Right. The town. The accusations. It seemed she could not escape the events of the previous night even in sleep. "Of course," Olivia agreed. "Just let me gather a few things." They ate a simple breakfast together, the silence between them not quite comfortable but not hostile either. It was the awkwardness of 2 strangers learning to share space, learning to be around each other. Jackson kept stealing glances at her, as if he too was still processing the reality of what they had done. "I should warn you," he said as they prepared to leave. "Today might be difficult. The town will have opinions about our marriage. Some will see it for what it is and attempt to protect you. Others will claim you bewitched me or that I am harboring a witch. I need you to stay calm no matter what is said. Let me handle any confrontations." "I am not good at staying silent when I am being attacked," Olivia admitted, "but I will try. The last thing I want is to make this situation worse for you." "You could not make it worse," Jackson assured her. "We are in this together now, remember that, together." There was that sense of partnership again, and Olivia found herself drawing strength from it. She was not alone anymore. She had someone standing beside her. They rode into Silver Peak together, Jackson on his bay horse and Olivia riding beside him on a gentle mare he had saddled for her. The town was bustling with morning activity, people going about their business. But as Jackson and Olivia made their way down the main street, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Whispers started. Jackson kept his posture relaxed but alert, one hand resting casually near his revolver. Olivia held her head high, refusing to show the fear that fluttered in her chest. They were going to face this with dignity. Their first stop was the general store, where Jackson needed to pick up supplies. The owner, Thomas Fletcher, stood behind the counter, his face going pale when he saw who was entering his store. "Jackson," he greeted cautiously, his eyes darting to Olivia. "Heard there was some excitement last night." "There was," Jackson agreed calmly. "Which is why I am here to make an announcement. As of last night, Miss Jenkins is now Mrs. Davis. We were married by Judge Morrison in a legal ceremony with proper witnesses. I trust you will spread that news, Tom." Thomas's jaw dropped. "You married her, the witch." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Jackson's hand moved closer to his weapon, though his voice remained even. "My wife is an herbalist and a healer, not a witch, and I will not tolerate anyone saying otherwise. Are we clear?" Thomas swallowed hard. "Yes, yes, of course." "Congratulations on your marriage, Jackson." "Madam." They made several more stops, Jackson ensuring that everyone who mattered knew about the marriage. At the bank, at the feed store, at the saloon where Jackson's ranch hands sometimes drank. Each time the reaction was the same: shock, confusion, often disapproval. But no one dared challenge Jackson directly. It was at the church that they encountered real trouble. Preacher Samuel Wright was standing on the steps, and his face darkened with rage when he saw them approaching. "You dare bring that woman here," he thundered. "You dare bring a witch to the house of God." "I dare bring my wife wherever I choose," Jackson replied, his voice hard as iron. "And you will show her the respect due to any married woman, preacher, or you and I are going to have a serious problem." "You have fallen under her spell," Samuel insisted, coming down the steps to stand in front of them. "She has used her dark arts to ensnare you, to cloud your judgment. This marriage cannot be legitimate." "The marriage was performed by a judge, witnessed and documented," Jackson said. "It is as legitimate as any marriage in this town. And your accusations are not only false, they are defamatory. Continue down this path, and I will pursue legal action against you." Samuel Wright's face was purple with fury, but before he could respond, another voice cut in. "Perhaps we should all calm down and discuss this rationally." It was Judge Morrison, approaching from the direction of his office. "Samuel, I performed the ceremony myself. The marriage is legal and binding. Jackson is correct that continued accusations could result in legal consequences." "She is a witch," Samuel insisted, but his voice lacked some of its earlier certainty. "She is an herbalist," the judge corrected. "And unless you have actual evidence of witchcraft beyond the fact that she knows more about healing than you do, I suggest you cease these accusations immediately. The law requires evidence, not hysteria. Several townspeople had gathered to watch the confrontation, and Olivia could feel their eyes on her. She wanted to defend herself, to point out all the people she had helped, all the lives she had saved. But she had promised Jackson she would let him handle things, so she stayed silent, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The physical contact seemed to give Jackson strength. He straightened, looking down at the preacher with undisguised contempt. "My wife and I have business to attend to. We came to town to make sure everyone knew about our marriage and to collect her belongings from her cabin. The council meeting this afternoon is now pointless, as there is no longer any question of what to do about Miss Jenkins. She is Mrs. Davis, under my protection and my name. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly." He turned away from the preacher, helping Olivia back onto her horse with gentle hands. As they rode toward her former cabin, she could feel the weight of the town's stare on her back. "That went about as well as I expected," Jackson said quietly once they were out of earshot. "Samuel will not give up easily, but the judge's support will help. And once people see that you are not cursing anyone or causing harm, they will calm down." "You have a lot of faith in human nature," Olivia said, trying to keep the bitterness from her voice. "I have faith that most people are fundamentally decent when they are not being whipped into a frenzy by fear," Jackson replied. "Give them time, Olivia. They will come around." At the cabin, they loaded Olivia's belongings into the wagon Jackson had brought. Her jars and bottles of remedies, her books, her small collection of personal items. It did not take long. She had never accumulated much in her time in Silver Peak. As they worked, several people passed by, watching but not interfering. One woman, however, did approach. She was young, perhaps 19, with dark hair and a baby on her hip. Olivia recognized her as Susan Miller, whose son she had helped deliver a year ago. "Mrs. Davis," Susan said quietly, her eyes downcast. "I wanted to apologize. For last night, my husband was in that mob and I should have stopped him. You saved my baby's life when he came early and could not breathe. I will never forget that, and I am ashamed I did not stand up for you." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Susan. That means more than you know." Susan nodded and hurried away, but it was enough. One person remembering the good she had done, one person willing to speak up. It was a start. They returned to the ranch in the early afternoon, the wagon loaded with Olivia's possessions. Jackson's men were working in the pastures, and as they approached the house, one of them rode up. He was older than Jackson, perhaps in his early 40s, with graying dark hair and weathered brown skin. His eyes were sharp but not unkind as he looked at Olivia. "Miguel," Jackson greeted him warmly. "I need to introduce you to someone. This is Olivia, my wife. We were married last night." If Miguel Cordova was shocked by this announcement, he hid it well. He simply touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Davis, it is an honor. Welcome to the ranch." "Thank you," Olivia said, immediately liking this man with his calm demeanor and respectful greeting. "Miguel, can you gather the other men? I need to make an announcement, and I would rather do it all at once." Within minutes, 4 men stood in front of the house. Miguel, 2 younger ranch hands named Billy and Tom, and an older cowboy called Rusty. Jackson introduced Olivia to each of them, explaining the situation honestly. "Some of you may have heard that there was trouble in town last night," Jackson said. "Olivia was being accused of witchcraft by some ignorant townspeople. I stepped in, and we were married to ensure her protection. I want you all to understand that she is an herbalist and a healer, not a witch. She will be living here as my wife, and she will also serve as the ranch healer. Any injuries or illnesses, you come to her. She knows her craft, and I trust her completely." The men exchanged glances, processing this information. It was Billy, the youngest at perhaps 20, who spoke first. "Madam, if you are as good at healing as the boss says, then you are more than welcome here. I sliced my hand open last month and the cut has been slow to heal. Would you mind taking a look at it?" "Of course," Olivia said, grateful for the acceptance in his voice. "Let me get my supplies unpacked, and I will examine it properly." The men returned to their work, and Jackson helped Olivia carry her belongings into the house. They set up one of the spare bedrooms as her workspace, lining the shelves with her jars and bottles, setting up her table for preparing remedies. It felt good to be arranging her things, creating order from chaos. "This is perfect," Olivia said as they finished. "I can work here without being in your way." "You are never in my way," Jackson said. He was standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "I meant what I said, Olivia. I want this to be a partnership. If you need anything for your work, supplies or equipment or space, you only need to ask." "Why are you being so kind to me?" The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it. "You have given me everything, asked for almost nothing in return. I do not understand." Jackson was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "My father was not a good man. He drank too much, gambled away money we needed for supplies, hit my mother when he was angry. I watched her suffer for years before she finally died, worn down by the hardness of life and his cruelty. Before she passed, I made her a promise. I promised that if I ever had the means to help someone, if I ever saw someone suffering the way she suffered, I would do something about it." He met Olivia's eyes, and she saw old pain there, but also determination. "When I saw that mob outside your cabin, I saw my mother, scared, alone, facing violence from people who should have protected her. I could not save her, but I could save you, and I do not regret it, Olivia, not for a moment." Olivia's throat was tight with emotion. She crossed the room to stand in front of him, looking up into his face. "Your mother would be proud of you. The man you have become, the choices you make. I am honored to be your wife, Jackson Davis, even if it happened in the strangest of circumstances." Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening of the connection that had been tentatively forming. Jackson's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle and warm. "We are going to be all right," he said softly. "You and me, we are going to make this work." "Yes," Olivia agreed, leaning into his touch. "We are." The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Olivia threw herself into making the house a home, cleaning and organizing, planting a garden behind the house where she could grow herbs and vegetables. She treated injuries among the ranch hands, earning their respect with her skill and knowledge. Billy's hand healed quickly under her care. Rusty's chronic knee pain eased with a poultice she made. Tom came to her for a remedy when he caught a cold, and she brewed him a tea that had him back to full strength within days. Jackson was often out working with the cattle, but when he was at the house, he and Olivia fell into comfortable companionship. They ate meals together, talking about their days, sharing stories from their pasts. She learned that he had bought the ranch with money he had saved from years of working as a hired hand on other spreads. He learned that her mother had come from a long line of healers, that the knowledge Olivia possessed had been passed down through generations of women in her family. They danced around each other carefully, aware of their married status, but also of the fact that their relationship was still new and undefined. Jackson never pushed for more intimacy than Olivia was willing to give, and Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to him, appreciating his steadiness, his quiet strength, his fundamental decency. It was a month after their wedding when trouble returned. Jackson had gone into town for supplies, leaving Olivia at the ranch with the men. She was in her workroom, preparing a salve for saddle sores, when she heard horses approaching at a gallop. Looking out the window, her heart sank. Samuel Wright was riding up to the house, accompanied by Henry Carlson and 3 other men from town. They all looked angry, determined. Olivia hurried downstairs and out onto the porch, where Miguel had already positioned himself. The foreman looked grim but resolute. "Gentlemen," Miguel said evenly, "Mr. Davis is not here. You should come back another time." "We are not here for Jackson," Samuel said, dismounting. "We are here for the witch. The council has decided that the marriage does not change what she is. She needs to face justice." "The council has no authority over Mrs. Davis," Miguel replied, his hand resting on his revolver. "And you are on private property. I suggest you leave before Mr. Davis returns." "Get out of the way, Mexican," Henry Carlson snarled. "This does not concern you." Miguel's face hardened. "Mrs. Davis is the wife of my employer and a good woman besides. It concerns me very much, and I am not moving." The other ranch hands were approaching now, drawn by the commotion. Billy, Tom, and Rusty ranged themselves beside Miguel, a united front. 4 men against 5, but Olivia could see the determination in her defender's eyes. "Stop," she called out, stepping forward. "Please, all of you, stop. I do not want anyone hurt because of me." "Olivia, get back inside," Miguel said urgently. "No," she replied, descending the porch steps. "If these men have something to say to me, they can say it to my face." "What is it you want, preacher?" Samuel Wright's eyes were alight with zealous fervor. "You have been found guilty of witchcraft by the town council. You are to return to Silver Peak to face punishment." "What evidence do you have?" Olivia demanded. "What have I done that constitutes witchcraft? You healed Billy Thompson's hand in 3 days when such a wound should have taken 2 weeks to mend," Henry said. "That is unnatural." "I cleaned it properly, kept infection away, and used a salve that promotes healing," Olivia replied. "There is nothing magical about good medicine." "You speak to your plants when you gather them," Samuel accused. "You use strange words." "I thank the plants for their gift, and sometimes I speak in Latin, the language of medicine," Olivia said, her voice rising. "That makes me educated, not evil." "Enough debate," one of the other men said. "We are taking her back to town." He moved toward Olivia, and several things happened at once. Miguel's gun cleared leather. Billy and Tom moved to block the man's path. And then, from behind the men from town, came a voice that cut through the tension like a knife. "Touch my wife, and I will kill you where you stand." Jackson was back, sitting astride his horse with his rifle resting across his saddle. His face was calm, but his eyes promised death. Behind him rode Judge Morrison and, surprisingly, Sheriff Donovan, a portly man who usually stayed out of conflicts. "This is a legal matter, Jackson," Samuel said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "There is nothing legal about a mob coming to my property to kidnap my wife," Jackson replied. He dismounted smoothly, his rifle never wavering. "Judge, perhaps you can explain to these men the concept of due process." Judge Morrison urged his horse forward, his expression stern. "The town council has no legal authority to try anyone for anything. If there are accusations of a crime, they go through the sheriff, who investigates and brings charges if warranted. What you are attempting here, gentlemen, is vigilante justice, which is itself a crime. I suggest you return to town before I have the sheriff arrest you all." "But the council voted," Henry protested weakly. "The council can vote all they like," the judge said. "It has no bearing on the law. Mrs. Davis is a citizen in good standing, married to a respected rancher. Unless you have actual evidence of an actual crime, not superstitious nonsense, you have no case." Now leave this property before things get ugly." The men from town looked at each other, their certainty crumbling. They were outnumbered now, outgunned, and facing the clear disapproval of the two most important legal figures in the county. Slowly, they began to remount their horses. "This is not over," Samuel said as he turned his horse back toward town. "Yes, it is," Jackson replied. "And if you set foot on my property again without invitation, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Are we clear, preacher?" Samuel did not answer, but he spurred his horse into a trot, the other men following. They disappeared down the trail in a cloud of dust, leaving an uneasy silence in their wake. Jackson immediately came to Olivia, his hands running over her arms, checking for any injury. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" "I am fine," Olivia assured him, though she was shaking now that the danger had passed. "Miguel and the others protected me. They were amazing." Jackson turned to his foreman and the other ranch hands. "Thank you, all of you. I will not forget what you did today." "She is one of us now, boss," Billy said simply. "We look after our own." The words brought tears to Olivia's eyes. One of us. She had never felt that sense of belonging in Silver Peak, but here on this ranch, with these men and this extraordinary man who was her husband, she was finally home. After the others had dispersed, Jackson led Olivia inside, his arm around her shoulders. She was trembling now, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving her system. "I should have been here," Jackson said, anger at himself clear in his voice. "I should not have left you alone." "You could not have known they would come," Olivia said. "And I was not alone. Miguel and the others were here. Jackson, you cannot watch over me every moment. We cannot live like that." "I know," he said, but he looked haunted. "When I saw them here, saw Samuel reaching for you, I thought I was going to lose you. And I realized something, Olivia. Somewhere over the past month, you have become more to me than just a wife in name." Olivia's heart was pounding, but not from fear this time. "What are you saying?" Jackson turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I am saying that I care about you, deeply. I am saying that what started as a practical arrangement has become something real for me. You are brave and kind and brilliant, and I find myself thinking about you constantly when I am out working. I find myself hurrying home just to see you, to hear about your day, to sit across from you at dinner. I am saying, Olivia, that I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and vulnerable. Olivia looked into Jackson's eyes and saw truth there, saw the same growing affection she had been feeling but had been afraid to name. "Jackson," she said softly, "I think I am falling in love with you too. I thought this marriage would be a practical arrangement, a way to survive. But you have given me so much more than survival. You have given me respect, partnership, and a place to belong. When I think about my future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it." The smile that broke across Jackson's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Olivia went willingly, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heart beating strong and steady, a reminder that she was safe and protected and loved. "I want us to have a real marriage," Jackson said into her hair, "in every way. But only if you want that too, Olivia. Only if you are ready." Olivia pulled back slightly to look up at him. This man who had saved her, who had stood by her, who had given her a home and asked for nothing but partnership in return. She thought about the nights they had spent talking, the laughter they had shared, the way her heart lifted every time he walked into a room. "I want that too," she said. "I am ready, Jackson. I want to be your wife in truth, not just in name." He kissed her then, not the chaste peck of their wedding, but a real kiss, deep and full of promise. Olivia melted into it, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, faces flushed. "Well," Jackson said with a slightly dazed smile, "that was worth waiting for." Olivia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Yes, it was." That night, they shared the master bedroom for the first time as true husband and wife. Jackson was gentle and patient, making sure Olivia was comfortable every step of the way. There was awkwardness, as there always is with first times, but there was also tenderness and growing passion. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Olivia felt complete in a way she never had before. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Olivia's life. Her relationship with Jackson deepened and strengthened as they learned each other's bodies and hearts. She continued her work as the ranch healer, and word began to spread to neighboring properties. Soon, people from other ranches were coming to her for help, trading goods and services for her remedies. The situation in Silver Peak remained tense. Samuel Wright continued to preach against her, and some in the town still viewed her with suspicion. But as time passed and no curses befell anyone, no mysterious illnesses struck the town, the hysteria began to fade. More people, emboldened by Susan Miller's earlier example, began to speak up about the times Olivia had helped them. It was 3 months after the confrontation at the ranch when Martha Prescott showed up at the door. She stood on the porch, looking uncomfortable and ashamed, her hands twisting in her skirt. "Mrs. Davis," she said when Olivia answered the door, "I know I have no right to ask, but my grandson is sick. He has a fever that will not break, and the doctor in town says there is nothing more he can do. Please, I know I was one of those who accused you, but he is just a child, only 4 years old. I am begging you, please help him." Olivia could have refused. This woman had been one of the loudest voices calling for her death. But Olivia was a healer, and a sick child was a sick child, regardless of his grandmother's sins. "Tell me his symptoms," Olivia said, already moving to gather her supplies. She spent the rest of the day at the Prescott house, treating little Timothy with willow bark tea for the fever and a poultice for the congestion in his lungs. She stayed through the night, monitoring his condition, adjusting her treatment as needed. By morning the fever had broken and the child was breathing easier. Martha Prescott wept with relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she said over and over. "Thank you. I am so sorry for what I did, for what I said. You are not a witch. You are an angel." "I am neither," Olivia said tiredly. "I am just someone who knows how to heal. That is all I have ever been." Word of Timothy's recovery spread through Silver Peak like wildfire. The tide of public opinion began to turn decisively in Olivia's favor. People started openly defending her, reminding others of the times she had helped them or their families. Samuel Wright found his congregation dwindling as more and more people refused to listen to his accusations. It was 6 months after their marriage when the preacher finally gave up. He left Silver Peak, moving to another town where perhaps his fire and brimstone message would find a more receptive audience. With his departure, the last real opposition to Olivia faded away. Judge Morrison came to the ranch personally to deliver the news. "The town council has voted to formally withdraw all accusations against you, Mrs. Davis. They have also issued a public apology for the events of last year. I know it does not undo the harm that was done, but I hope it provides some closure." "Thank you, Judge," Olivia said. She was sitting on the porch with Jackson, his arm around her shoulders, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I appreciate you bringing the news in person." After the judge left, Jackson pulled Olivia closer. "How do you feel, knowing that it is finally truly over?" Olivia thought about it. She could still remember the terror of that night, the sight of the angry mob outside her cabin. But she could also remember Jackson appearing like an avenging angel, defending her without hesitation. She could remember the vows they had spoken, the partnership they had built, the love that had grown between them. "I feel grateful," she said finally. "Grateful that everything happened exactly as it did, because it brought me to you. I would not change a single moment, Jackson, because every moment led me here, to this life we have built together." He kissed her temple, a gesture that had become familiar and dear. "I love you, Olivia Davis, and I love you, Jackson Davis." They sat together as the sun set, content in each other's presence, secure in the knowledge that they had weathered the worst and come out stronger for it. A year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with both joy and trepidation. Her mother had died young, and Olivia had always worried she might suffer the same fate. But Jackson was beside her every step of the way, supportive and attentive without being overbearing. Rosa Cordova, Miguel's wife, became a frequent presence at the ranch as Olivia's pregnancy progressed. The older woman had delivered many babies and was a wealth of knowledge and comfort. She and Olivia became close friends, and Rosa helped Olivia prepare for the arrival of the baby. When her time came, it was a long and difficult labor. Olivia drew on all her knowledge of herbs and healing, using teas and breathing techniques to manage the pain. Jackson stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering words of encouragement. Finally, after nearly 20 hours, their son was born. He came into the world screaming, healthy and strong, with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue-gray eyes. Jackson wept as he held his son for the first time, and Olivia felt her heart expand to accommodate this new, all-consuming love. They named him James Alexander Davis, after Jackson's father's middle name and Jackson's own middle name, a link to the past and a hope for the future. Jackson proved to be a devoted father, spending every free moment with his son, teaching him about the ranch as he grew, showing him the same patience and kindness he had shown Olivia from the beginning. 2 years later, Olivia gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Claire Marie. She had Olivia's dark hair and delicate features, but Jackson's stubborn determination. The ranch house that had once felt empty and lonely now rang with the sounds of children playing, of laughter and life. Olivia continued her work as a healer, training the ranch hands in basic first aid and teaching Claire, as she grew older, the same knowledge her mother had taught her. The family became a fixture in Silver Peak, respected and well-liked. Olivia treated anyone who needed help, never holding grudges against those who had once accused her. Miguel and Rosa remained close friends, and the ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Billy eventually married a girl from town and brought her to live in a small house Jackson built on the property. The ranch grew into more than just a business. It became a community, a place where people looked after each other. When James was 6 and Claire was 4, Jackson surprised Olivia by taking her into town to see something he had been working on. On the edge of Silver Peak, a new building had been constructed, larger than her old cabin with multiple rooms and good lighting. "What is this?" Olivia asked as Jackson led her inside. "This is your clinic," Jackson said, smiling at her surprise. "I know you have been treating people from all over, and you have been doing it out of our home or riding out to their properties. I thought it was time you had a proper place to work. Somewhere people can come to you, where you have space for supplies and equipment. What do you think?" Olivia walked through the building, taking in the examination room, the storage area for her medicines, the small office where she could keep records. Tears streamed down her face as the magnitude of this gift sank in. "Jackson, this is too much," she managed. "It is not nearly enough," he replied, pulling her into his arms. You have given me everything, Olivia. A home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. This is the least I can do to support your work. Besides, you are the best healer for 100 miles. You deserve a place worthy of your skills. The clinic opened a month later, and people came from all over the region to be treated by Olivia Davis, the herbalist who had once been accused of witchcraft and was now the most trusted healer in Nevada. She trained apprentices, young women eager to learn her skills, ensuring that her knowledge would be passed on to the next generation. Years passed in a blur of happiness. James grew into a strong, kind young man who loved the ranch and worked alongside his father. Claire showed an aptitude for healing and began studying with Olivia, learning the family craft. They added to their family with another son, Thomas, and then a final daughter, Elizabeth, completing the brood at 4 children. The ranch continued to prosper, and Jackson's reputation as a fair and honest rancher spread throughout Nevada. He was elected to the territorial legislature, where he fought for better treatment of ranch workers and more rights for women. Olivia accompanied him to the capital, bringing her healing skills to bear on anyone who needed them, regardless of their station or ability to pay. When Nevada achieved statehood, Jackson was invited to the celebration in Carson City. He brought his entire family, proud to show them the history they were witnessing. Olivia stood beside him, watching the festivities, thinking about how far they had come from that terrifying night when a mob had gathered outside her cabin. "Any regrets?" Jackson asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Not a single one," Olivia replied truthfully. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed, Jackson. A home, a family, work that matters, and a love I never thought I would find. I am the luckiest woman alive." "I am the lucky one," Jackson countered. "You made me believe in goodness again, Olivia. You made this house a home and gave me a reason to be better than I might have been. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." They kissed, oblivious to the crowds around them, lost in each other as they had been from the beginning. As they grew older, their love only deepened. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching their grandchildren play, James's children and Claire's. A whole new generation running through the ranch that Jackson had built and Olivia had made a home. Thomas was learning the ranching business, preparing to take over when Jackson was ready to step back. Elizabeth was in medical school, the first woman from Silver Peak to attend, following in her mother's footsteps, but with formal training Olivia had never had access to. When Jackson turned 55, he handed the day-to-day running of the ranch over to Thomas and Miguel's son, who had grown up alongside the Davis children. He wanted to spend more time with Olivia, traveling to places they had never had time to see, enjoying the fruits of their decades of hard work. They visited San Francisco and saw the ocean for the first time together. They went to Denver and marveled at the growing city. They traveled back east to Washington, where Jackson lobbied for women's rights and Olivia met with other healers and doctors, sharing knowledge and learning new techniques. But they always came back to Silver Peak, to the ranch that was the foundation of their life together. The town had changed dramatically from the fearful, superstitious place it had been when they first met. It was more diverse now, more open-minded, a place where differences were celebrated rather than feared. Olivia liked to think she had played some small part in that change. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration. The entire town turned out, along with people from surrounding communities, all wanting to honor the couple who had become legends in their own time. There were speeches about Jackson's fairness and business acumen, about Olivia's healing skills and her generosity. But mostly, people talked about their love story, about how an act of courage and kindness had blossomed into a partnership that had lasted 3 decades and showed no signs of weakening. Jackson stood to give a speech, pulling Olivia up beside him. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of friends and family, of people they had helped and people who had helped them, and he smiled. 30 years ago, he said, his voice still strong despite his age, I made the best decision of my life. I stood up for a woman I did not know, and I married her to protect her from an unjust persecution. I thought I was saving her, but the truth is, she saved me. Olivia has been my partner, my best friend, the love of my life, and the mother of my children. She has made me a better man, a better rancher, a better human being. Everything good in my life traces back to the night I found the courage to defend her. So thank you, Olivia, for saying yes when I asked you to be my wife. Thank you for loving me, for believing in me, for building this incredible life with me. I look forward to 30 more years by your side. There was not a dry eye in the crowd, and Olivia was crying openly as she took her turn to speak. I was terrified that night, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. I thought my life was over. And then Jackson appeared and he did something extraordinary. He stood up for what was right, even though it cost him. He gave me his name, his protection, and eventually his heart. He has been my rock, my refuge, and my greatest adventure. I never thought I would find love, never thought I would have a family or a place to truly call home. Jackson gave me all of that and more. So thank you, my love, for being the man you are. Thank you for 30 years of partnership, laughter, and love. I look forward to whatever time we have left, knowing that every day with you is a gift. They kissed to thunderous applause, and the celebration continued late into the night. Their children danced, their grandchildren played, and Jackson and Olivia sat together, hands clasped, watching the joy they had created together. As the years continued to roll by, they remained devoted to each other. Jackson developed arthritis in his hands, and Olivia created special salves to ease his pain. Olivia's eyesight began to fail, and Jackson read to her every evening, their favorite books and new ones, his voice a comfort in the growing darkness. When they were both in their 70s, Miguel passed away, followed a year later by Rosa. It was a difficult time, losing friends who had been with them from the beginning. But their family rallied around them, and they found comfort in the memories of good times shared. Jackson's health began to decline when he was 78. He developed a cough that would not go away, and despite all of Olivia's knowledge and skill, she could not cure him. The doctor from town confirmed what she already knew in her heart. Jackson was dying. He faced his mortality with the same quiet courage he had faced everything else in life. He made sure all his affairs were in order, that his children and grandchildren were provided for, that Olivia would be secure. And then he simply focused on spending his remaining time with the people he loved. On a beautiful spring morning, with wildflowers blooming in the fields and birds singing in the trees, Jackson Davis died peacefully in his sleep with Olivia beside him. He was 80 years old and had lived a full, rich life. Olivia was devastated by the loss, but she took comfort in the fact that they had had 52 years together, far more than many couples could claim. She continued to live on the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still offering healing to anyone who needed it, though she was slower now, more limited. She kept Jackson's memory alive by telling stories to her great-grandchildren, about the night he had saved her, about the life they had built together, about the love that had sustained them through 5 decades of marriage. She showed them the quilt his mother had made, still on the bed they had shared. She took them to visit his grave on the hillside overlooking the ranch, where she went every day to talk to him, to tell him about her day, to assure him that she was doing fine but missed him terribly. 5 years after Jackson's death, at the age of 83, Olivia Jenkins Davis passed away in her sleep. Her children found her in the morning, peaceful and pain-free, a smile on her face. On her bedside table was Jackson's old pocket watch, which she had kept close since his death, and a journal entry she had written the night before. In it, she wrote about a dream she had had where Jackson appeared to her, young and strong as he had been that first night, sitting astride his bay horse. He had extended his hand to her and said, "Come on, Olivia. I have been waiting for you. Let us go home together." The family gathered for Olivia's funeral, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a testament to the love she and Jackson had shared. She was buried beside Jackson on the hillside, under a simple stone that read, "Olivia Davis, beloved wife, mother, and healer." She saved lives and changed hearts. The clinic she had started continued to operate, run by Claire's daughter, who had inherited both the skill and the passion for healing. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations, a living legacy of what Jackson and Olivia had built together. And in Silver Peak, Nevada, the story of the herbalist accused of witchcraft and the cowboy who defended her became legend. It was told to children as a lesson about courage and kindness. It was told to young couples as an example of how love can grow even in the most unlikely circumstances. It was told to anyone who would listen as proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things can come from the darkest moments. Because on a spring night in 1878, one man had the courage to stand up for what was right, and one woman had the courage to trust him. And from that single act of bravery and faith, an entire legacy was born, a legacy of love and healing and family that endured long after both of them were gone. The ranch still stood generations later, still working, still thriving, still home to descendants who carried the Davis name and the Jenkins healing knowledge. In the town of Silver Peak, a historical marker commemorated Olivia Davis, the healer who had overcome persecution to become one of the most important figures in the region's history. And on the hillside overlooking it all, 2 graves stood side by side, the final resting place of a cowboy and an herbalist who had found in each other everything they never knew they needed. Their story had a beginning, that night of fear and courage. It had a middle, filled with love and laughter and the building of something lasting. And it had an end, as all stories must, with 2 lives well lived and a love that had endured every challenge fate could throw at it. But in another sense, their story never really ended. It lived on in their children and grandchildren. It lived on in the clinic that still bore Olivia's methods and philosophies. It lived on in the ranch that Jackson had built and that still operated according to his principles of fairness and hard work. It lived on in the town of Silver Peak itself, which had learned hard lessons about fear and acceptance, about the danger of superstition, and the power of standing up for what is right. And it lived on in the hearts of everyone who heard the tale, a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, that courage can change the course of a life, and that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on someone, from standing up when it would be easier to walk away, from choosing to see the good in people rather than the fear. Jackson and Olivia Davis had started as strangers brought together by desperate circumstances. They had become partners, then friends, then lovers, and finally soulmates. They had faced down mobs and persecution, had built a life from nothing, had raised a family and created a legacy that would last generations. And through it all, from that first meeting until the very end, they had loved each other with a depth and devotion that was rare and precious and utterly beautiful. Theirs was a love story for the ages, proof that even in the harsh and often brutal world of the Wild West, tenderness could flourish, partnership could thrive, and two people could find in each other a home that no one could ever take away. The end of their earthly lives was not the end of what they built. Every person they helped, every life they touched, every lesson they taught carried forward the essence of who they were. The town that had once feared Olivia now revered her memory. The ranch that Jackson built became a model for others, and the love they shared became the standard by which their descendants measured their own relationships. In the years after both had passed, their great-grandchildren would sit on that same porch where Jackson and Olivia had spent so many evenings, looking out over land that still bore the mark of their hard work and vision. They would tell the story again, keeping it alive, making sure that no one forgot the herbalist and the cowboy, the accusation and the defense, the marriage that started in practicality and became something transcendent. And so, though Jackson and Olivia were gone, though their physical bodies rested on that hillside under the Nevada sky, they lived on in every person who knew their story, in every heart touched by their example, in every life improved by their legacy. They had found each other in the darkness, had built a life in the light, and had left behind something that would never truly die. Their love was eternal, their impact immeasurable, and their story complete, a testament to what is possible when courage and compassion meet, when two souls recognize in each other a kindred spirit, when a moment of bravery blossoms into a lifetime of devotion. From accusation to defense, from strangers to partners, from practical arrangement to profound love, from beginning to end and beyond, theirs was a story that would be told forever, in Silver Peak and beyond, a reminder that the greatest adventures often start with a single act of standing up for what is right, and that the greatest loves often come when we least expect them. The herbalist and the cowboy, Olivia and Jackson, forever intertwined, forever remembered, forever an inspiration to all who heard their tale.